Have you ever noticed something strange about rich people? At first, they all seem completely different. One billionaire lives in a massive mansion overlooking the ocean. Another wears the same plain gray t-shirt every single day. One collects luxury cars. Another drives a 10-year-old Toyota. Some wear watches worth $500,000. Others don't wear a watch at all. It feels like wealth gives people unlimited choices, so naturally, you'd expect every rich person to live a completely different life. But that's not what happens. In fact, the richer people become, the more similar they start to look, not just in what they buy, but in how they think, how they invest, how they make decisions, and even how they spend an ordinary Tuesday morning. At first, I thought it was just a coincidence. Maybe wealthy people simply copied each other. Maybe luxury brands only sold to a small group of people. Or maybe once you become rich, everyone naturally develops the same taste. But the deeper I looked, the stranger this mystery became. Because this pattern wasn't limited to billionaires. It appeared in entrepreneurs, investors, business owners, doctors, engineers, people who built wealth in completely different industries, living in different countries, coming from different backgrounds, were somehow making the exact same financial decisions. And that shouldn't happen. If two people take completely different paths, why do they end up at the same destination? That was the question I couldn't stop thinking about. Then I discovered something that completely changed the way I look at money. The truth is, the richest people in the world aren't connected because they own the same expensive things. They're connected because they all understand one invisible rule. A rule most people spend their entire lives without ever noticing. And once you understand that rule, you'll never look at wealth the same way again. Part 1. The luxury lie. If I asked you to close your eyes and imagine a rich person, what would you see? A Lamborghini? A Rolex? A private jet? A mansion with an infinity pool? If you imagined any of those, you're not alone, because that's exactly what the world has trained us to believe. Since childhood, movies have shown us that rich people live in giant houses. Music videos celebrate expensive jewelry. Social media floods our feeds with designer clothes, luxury vacations, and supercars parked outside five-star hotels. Without realizing it, our brains quietly create a simple equation. Expensive things equals rich people. And after seeing that equation thousands of times, it starts feeling like a fact. But here's the problem. We've confused the result with the cause. Think about it. When you see a billionaire stepping out of a Rolls-Royce, your brain instantly connects the car with the wealth. It silently whispers, "That's what success looks like." But the Rolls-Royce didn't create the billionaire. The billionaire created the ability to buy the Rolls-Royce. That difference changes everything. Imagine two people suddenly receive $1 million. The first person immediately upgrades their entire lifestyle. A luxury SUV, a bigger house, designer clothes, expensive vacations. To everyone around them, they look incredibly successful. The second person does something far less exciting. They buy shares in businesses, invest in index funds, purchase rental properties, build assets that quietly generate income month after month. Fast forward 10 years. Who do you think is wealthier? The answer isn't obvious, because one person invested in looking rich. The other invested in becoming richer. And that's the trap millions of people fall into every single day. We're surrounded by images of consumption. So we naturally believe consumption creates wealth. But wealth isn't built in shopping malls. It isn't built in luxury dealerships, and it definitely isn't built on Instagram. Real wealth grows quietly, far away from the spotlight. Think of an iceberg floating in the ocean. The expensive car, the luxury watch, the designer clothes, that's the tiny piece everyone can see above the water. But underneath, hidden from view, is something much larger. Businesses, investments, ownership, cash flow, financial discipline. That's the foundation holding everything together. The visible lifestyle is only the final chapter. Most people never read the pages that came before it. And that's why so many spend years chasing the symbols of wealth, without ever understanding the system that created them. But here's where things become even stranger. Because if luxury isn't actually creating wealth, why do wealthy people still buy luxury brands at all? Is it just for attention? Or is there another reason hidden beneath the surface? To answer that, we have to look at something almost invisible. Not what rich people buy, but what they actually own. And that's where the real story begins. Part 2. The Invisible Empire. Let's look beneath the surface. Imagine walking into the garage of an average person. You'll probably see a car, maybe two. Walk into the house. You'll find a television, a sofa, a dining table, a laptop, all things they own. Now imagine walking into the financial life of a self-made millionaire. What do you think you'll find? Another garage full of luxury cars? A room packed with expensive watches? A closet overflowing with designer clothes? Maybe. But that's not where most of their wealth actually lives. In fact, the things that make them rich usually can't be seen at all. Because while most people spend their lives collecting products, wealthy people spend their lives collecting ownership. And those are two completely different games. Think about the phone in your pocket. You probably own it. But every time you pay your monthly phone bill, someone else earns money. Every time you stream a movie, someone owns that platform. Every time you order food, someone owns the app. Every time you shop online, someone owns the marketplace. The world is full of transactions, but hidden behind almost every transaction is an owner. Most people focus on buying things. Rich people focus on becoming the person who gets paid every time someone else buys them. That's why they all seem to own the same invisible things. Pieces of companies, apartment buildings, warehouses, index funds, businesses, intellectual property. Things that don't just sit there, they work. Imagine buying a vending machine. On the first day, it earns $20. The second day, another $20. The third day, another $20. You're not trading your time anymore. The machine is working while you're sleeping. Now imagine owning 10 vending machines, or 100, or owning part of a company that has thousands of machines all over the country. That's how ownership works. Money stops being something you spend. It becomes an employee. Every dollar gets assigned a job. Its only purpose is to bring back more dollars. And once you understand that, you begin to see the world differently. A shopping mall isn't just a place to buy clothes. It's a business generating rent. A coffee shop isn't just where people buy coffee. It's a cash flow machine. An apartment isn't simply somewhere to live. It's an asset capable of producing income for decades. That's exactly how wealthy people see the world. They don't just ask, "What does this cost?" They ask, "What does this produce?" That single question changes almost every financial decision they'll ever make. Research on wealthy households has found that their wealth is heavily concentrated in productive assets like businesses and stocks, rather than items that lose value over time. That's why two people can earn exactly the same salary, yet end up with completely different futures. One buys liabilities, the other quietly accumulates assets. At first, the difference is almost invisible. A few $100s here, a few thousand there, nothing dramatic. But then something fascinating happens. Those assets begin creating income. That income buys more assets. Those assets generate even more income. And suddenly, wealth starts growing on its own. It's like planting a single apple seed. For years, nothing remarkable happens. Then one tree appears. That tree produces hundreds of apples. Inside every apple are more seeds. Years later, one tiny seed has quietly become an entire orchard. That's exactly how ownership compounds. And here's what's truly fascinating. It doesn't matter whether you're Warren Buffett, a local business owner, or someone who quietly invested every month for 30 years. The mathematics never changes. Eventually, everyone who follows this path starts owning surprisingly similar things. Not because someone told them to, not because they copied each other, because the math keeps leading them to the same destination. That's why wealthy people across different countries, different cultures, and completely different industries often end up building nearly identical portfolios, stocks, businesses, real estate, cash-producing assets, not because they're fashionable, because they work. But while I was researching this, one question refused to leave my mind. If wealthy people understand all of this, if they know real wealth comes from ownership, then why do they still spend thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands, on luxury brands? Why buy a watch that tells the same time as a $50 watch? Why wear shoes that cost 10 times more than everyone else's? Why carry handbags worth the price of a car? At first, it seemed completely irrational, until I realized they weren't buying the object. They were buying something invisible, something psychologists have been studying for decades. A silent language that every human understands, even if they don't realize it. And once you see that language, you'll never look at luxury the same way again. Part 3. The Secret Language of Wealth. Think about the last time you walked into a room full of strangers. Within seconds, without saying a single word, people had already formed an opinion about you. Not because they knew your name, not because they knew your job, not because they knew how much money you had, simply because they could see you. Humans have been doing this for thousands of years. Long before expensive watches, designer clothes, or luxury cars existed, our ancestors constantly searched for clues. Who was the strongest? Who was the leader? Who had the most resources? Who could be trusted? Those tiny signals helped people survive. And even though the world has changed, our brains haven't. We're still looking for signals. Only today, those signals look different. A tailored suit, a luxury handbag, a sports car, a penthouse apartment. They're not just objects, they're messages. Psychologists call this status signaling. It's the idea that people use visible possessions to communicate invisible qualities. Power, success, influence, security. Whether we realize it or not, our brains make these judgments almost instantly. Research has even shown that people displaying recognizable luxury brands are often treated differently. Others may assume they're more successful or more influential before a single conversation even begins. And that's why luxury brands don't just sell products. They sell perception. Think about it. A $50 watch and a $50,000 watch tell exactly the same time. A basic white t-shirt and a designer t-shirt serve exactly the same purpose. A Toyota and a Rolls-Royce will both get you to your destination. So why would anyone pay hundreds or even thousands of times more. Because they aren't buying function, they're buying meaning. They're buying identity. They're buying the story that object tells before they even open their mouth. But here's where things become truly fascinating. The richer people become, the less interested they often are in obvious luxury. At first, that sounds completely backwards. Shouldn't having more money mean buying even flashier things? That's what most people expect. But among the ultra-wealthy, a completely different trend begins to appear. Instead of louder luxury, they choose quieter luxury. It's called quiet luxury. No giant logos, no flashy branding, no need to announce their wealth to the entire world. Instead, they wear clothing that looks almost ordinary. A plain cashmere sweater, a perfectly tailored jacket, simple leather shoes. To most people, they look surprisingly average. But to someone inside that world, those choices speak volumes. It's almost like a private conversation, a language hidden in plain sight. You either recognize it or you don't. Think about Steve Jobs. Every presentation, the same black turtleneck, blue jeans, simple sneakers. At first glance, it looked repetitive, almost boring, but there was a reason. Every unnecessary decision had been removed. He didn't want to waste mental energy deciding what to wear. His focus stayed exactly where it mattered, building Apple. Then there's Mark Zuckerberg. The same gray t-shirt, the same hoodie, again and again. Many people joked that he dressed like a college student, but those simple shirts reportedly cost hundreds of dollars. The goal wasn't to impress strangers. The goal was simplicity, because once your success is no longer questioned, you stop feeling the need to prove it. That's one of the biggest psychological shifts wealth creates. People who are still chasing status often want everyone to notice them. People who already have status usually don't. In fact, many wealthy people intentionally avoid attracting unnecessary attention. Not because they can't afford luxury, because they don't need validation from it anymore. And that's when I realized something surprising. Luxury isn't always about showing poor people that you're rich. Sometimes it's about quietly signaling to other wealthy people. It's an exclusive language, a language built on subtle details. The fabric, the craftsmanship, the fit, the history behind a watch, the rarity of a handbag. Details that almost nobody notices except the people they're meant for. Suddenly, everything made sense. Luxury wasn't disappearing. It was evolving. The louder the money, the more attention it usually wants. The quieter the money, the more confidence it often has. But then I found something that completely destroyed even this theory. Because if wealthy people truly cared about status, there was one decision they should never make. And yet millions of them make it every single day. Researchers studied thousands of millionaires to find out what they actually drove. The answer wasn't Ferrari, it wasn't Lamborghini, it wasn't Bentley. In fact, the most common answer was so ordinary that it completely shattered one of the biggest myths about wealth. And once you hear it, you'll understand why looking rich and being rich are often complete opposites. Part 4. The Millionaire Paradox. So what do millionaires actually drive? The answer should be obvious. If you have millions of dollars, why would you drive an ordinary car? Why sit in traffic in the same Toyota as everyone else when you could own almost anything on the road? But when researchers studied thousands of American millionaires, they found something that sounds almost like a joke. One of the most common cars driven by millionaires was a Toyota. Not a Ferrari, not a Lamborghini, a Toyota. Hondas were also among the most common brands. Think about that. Somebody could afford a car worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, but chooses to drive a vehicle that looks almost exactly like the one parked next door. And the reason isn't always that they can't afford the Ferrari. Many of them could buy one tomorrow. They simply don't see the purchase the same way. Most people look at a car and ask, "Can I afford the monthly payment?" A wealthy person might ask, "What could this money become if I didn't spend it?" Because every dollar has two possible futures. You can spend it today, or you can give it time. A luxury car gives you something immediately. An investment gives you something invisible. At first, nothing seems to happen. The money just sits there, quietly, boringly. But over time, it can begin producing more money. And that money can produce even more. This is why many millionaires are careful about lifestyle inflation. Imagine someone receives a $1,000 monthly raise. Instead of investing the extra money, they upgrade their apartment, buy a new car, eat at more expensive restaurants, take more expensive vacations. Within months, the entire raise is gone. Their income increased, but their wealth didn't. The quiet millionaire does something different. When their income rises, their lifestyle may rise slowly. But the gap between what they earn and what they spend gets invested. And over time, that gap becomes an engine. This doesn't mean wealthy people never spend money. They absolutely do. The difference is, they don't confuse spending money with building wealth. They build the machine first. Then they let the machine pay for the lifestyle. And that brings us to the most important part of the story. Because driving a Toyota won't make you rich. Avoiding designer clothes won't make you rich. The real question is, how does money begin to grow faster? How does someone go from saving a few $100s to watching their wealth increase by thousands without working thousands of extra hours? The answer begins with a number that sounds surprisingly small. $100,000. Part 5. The Money Machine. That number is $100,000. Before reaching it, you are mostly pushing the snowball yourself. You save, you invest, you make sacrifices. And sometimes it feels like nothing is happening. But as the snowball gets bigger, it begins collecting more snow on its own. Money can work the same way. Your first $10,000, your first $50,000 mostly comes from your own effort. But once your investments grow large enough, their returns can begin creating even more returns. That's the power of compound growth. Charlie Munger famously described the first $100,000 as one of the hardest financial milestones to reach. After that, your money can begin participating more meaningfully in its own growth. Imagine investing $100,000. A 7% return would mean roughly $7,000 of growth in a year, without working thousands of extra hours for it. Then the next year, your money can potentially grow on a larger amount. And over time, the snowball gets bigger. This is why wealthy people can appear to get richer faster. They don't necessarily work harder. They simply have more money working for them. Most people think, I work, then I get paid. But wealthy people increasingly experience, my money works, then I get paid. And that's why their financial lives begin to look so similar. Stocks, businesses, real estate, long-term investments. But one question remained. What allowed them to keep investing for decades while everyone else kept spending? Because the real secret isn't the investment. It's the system that made them invest in the first place. And that's the one thing almost every wealthy person owns.
Part 6. The one thing they all own. So what is the one thing almost every wealthy person owns? It's not a Ferrari. It's not a mansion.
It's not even $1 million in the bank. It's a system that makes the right financial decision before emotions get a chance to interfere. Because wealthy people don't rely on motivation, they automate. Money enters their account, and a portion is invested before they have a chance to spend it. They pay themselves first. Then they live on what's left. Most people do the opposite. They spend first, pay their bills, buy what they want, and hope something remains at the end of the month. Usually, nothing does, but the wealthy reverse the order. Their future gets paid first. Their present gets whatever remains. And over decades, that simple habit creates an enormous difference. They also understand something uncomfortable. Every purchase is a decision about the future. When you spend $1,000 today, you're not just losing $1,000. You're also giving up everything that money could potentially become. That's why wealthy people often have rules. Wait before making large purchases. Avoid unnecessary debt. Invest consistently. Don't allow every raise to become a lifestyle upgrade. These rules may sound boring, but that's the point. Wealth is rarely built through one spectacular decision. It's usually built through thousands of ordinary decisions, repeated for years, and eventually, those decisions become automatic. That's the real secret. The richest people don't have unlimited discipline. They simply build systems that require less discipline. They don't wake up every morning asking, "Should I invest today?" The system already does it. They don't ask, "Should I spend this entire raise?" Their lifestyle may already be designed around spending less than they earn. They don't ask, "Should I wait?" They've already learned that time is one of their most valuable assets. And now, the entire mystery begins to make sense. Why do wealthy people own similar investments? Because productive assets create wealth. Why do many drive ordinary cars? Because they understand opportunity cost. Why do some wear simple clothes? Because they don't need constant validation. Why does their money keep growing? Because they give it time. And why do they all seem to make similar decisions? Because the path to building wealth is surprisingly narrow. There are millions of ways to spend money, but far fewer ways to consistently grow it. And that's why the world's richest people don't actually own the same things. They own the same principles. And that changes the meaning of the entire question. Ending. The real thing they own, and maybe that's the biggest misunderstanding about wealth. We look at the car, the watch, the house, the vacation, the things that are easy to see, but those are only the surface. The real difference is hidden underneath. While one person is collecting things that lose value, another is collecting things that create value. While one person asks, "What can I buy with my money?" another asks, "What can my money buy for me?" And that question slowly changes everything. The world's richest people don't all drive the same cars. They don't all live in the same houses. They don't all wear the same clothes. But they often share something far more valuable. They own patience. They own discipline. They own systems. They own assets that can keep working when they aren't. And most importantly, they own the ability to delay a reward today for something much bigger tomorrow. That's why the millionaire driving a Toyota might actually be wealthier than the person driving a Lamborghini. The Toyota is what you can see. The investments, the businesses, the ownership, and the years of disciplined decisions are what you can't. And maybe that's the real reason rich people seem to own the same things. Not because they all have the same taste, not because they all follow the same trend, but because once you understand how wealth works, The smartest decisions start becoming surprisingly similar. The world may show you the car, the watch, the mansion, but the real wealth is usually hiding somewhere else. In the business, in the investments, in the habits, in the patience, in the decisions nobody sees. So the next time you see someone who looks rich, ask yourself a different question. Don't ask, what do they own? Ask, what do they own that I can't see? Because the things that make people look rich are often the things that make them poorer. And the things that make people wealthy are often completely invisible. The world's richest people don't all own the same cars. They don't all own the same houses. They don't all wear the same watches. But they do own the same way of thinking. And that's the one thing that created everything else. This is CultNexis. We explore the hidden psychology behind money, wealth, power, and human behavior, breaking down what most people never notice. So you don't just watch, you understand. If you want to see how the world really works, you're in the right place. Subscribe and explore the unknown.